Hi guys, I'm Shyla, the communications lead at Uplift, and today I'm joined by Zoe, who is the vice president and partner at Phala Network. She's also the council member at Phala Network. So thanks for joining us for our AMA today. And I'd love to get to know you first, Zoe. So firstly, thanks for joining us. And could you tell us a bit about you and your Web3 journey so far?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me today, Shaila. Hello, everyone, and hello from Berlin, Germany. Yeah, Shaila gave a nice introduction already. I'm Vice President of Growth and Business Development at Phala Network, and also an on-chain council member, but also the Global Head Ambassador for specific events for the Polkadot network. So as you see, I wear like several hats in the Polkadot ecosystem, but my main responsibility is the growth side for Phala network itself. I actually had like a interesting journey into Web3 that started in 2018. While I lived in Silicon Valley, and back then I actually moved into a crypto community. So as you might know, there are a lot of like communities in this area, and this community specifically focused on blockchain crypto. You could pay your rent with Bitcoin back then. And I started to go into projects for blockchain for social impact, or co-organize one of the biggest summits for blockchain for social impact, and then wanted to learn more about the underlying technology, right? Like the use cases are great, let's save the world with the new technology, but I really wanted to dig deep and understand the technology itself, and went down the rabbit hole, like everyone, I think, once they start to get into the space. And back then, I also studied information and cybersecurity, my second master's in Silicon Valley, and went to Stanford blockchain conference. And back then, this was the first meetup about Polkadot actually that I came across. So of course, was in a Bitcoin, Ethereum community, but then in 2018 was the first time I heard about Polkadot also through a meetup there. And I really understood the difference between the innovation or the innovative approach on this technology than like Bitcoin or Ethereum or other blockchains that were out there. And I got very, very excited about it. I was like, wow, this is something that I really want to be part of. Of course, knowing Gavin Wood and like his Ethereum journey, but this was really the innovative approach of Polkadot really dragged me into this space and the Polkadot ecosystem. Yeah, and then since then, I'm actually carrying the flag of an ambassador for Polkadot, being global head ambassador now. Became a council member in Phala Network, and then took on more and more responsibility. And now I'm here as vice president and partner of Phala Network, which is a parachain in the Polkadot ecosystem.
That's really cool. What a journey. So well done. It sounds really it's been really like a big roller coaster for you then. But I feel like you were in the right place at the right time, like to get sucked into this little community, and then be at this event where you learn about Polkadot, and then you seem like enchanted by it. So yeah, it looks like everything's just falling into place for you, and hopefully it's heading even you're going to be growing even more in your position that you're in. So so let's talk about back to Phala. Let's talk a bit about Phala, and how would you describe Phala, like in a short elevator pitch?
Yeah, so Phala Network, simply said, is a decentralized computation protocol, right? So it's not focusing on the storage, it's really the computation that you need to host a dApp, a game, DeFi infrastructure, whatever that needs like high computation. And we provide this in a decentralized way. So what we also focus on is really tackling the issue of trust in a computation cloud, right? Because trust, privacy is not really a big thing in centralized solutions. And what we then provide is a computation platform that can actually handle massive cloud processing. And how we do this is by actually including so-called secure enclaves that provide also the confidentiality in our computation cloud. That's the short version. So we can go much more in depth.
Yeah, no, that I think is quite succinct. You ask people to give like an elevator pitch, and they go on for like 5 minutes, and it's like, that's not an elevator pitch. But no, we'll go into like the details of it and the technicalities of it in a moment. So yeah, you'll get to expand on that point, definitely. So can you name some of the key features of Phala?
Key features, yes. I mean, as I said, it's the confidentiality, right, and the computation processing without losing confidentiality. The massive computation, I would say these are the two main features.
And how does Phala achieve this?
So if you think about centralized solutions, right? So we provide a cloud, but of course in a decentralized way. If you think about centralized solutions like AWS, GCP, Azure, all of these cloud solutions, they are owned and created by these big tech giants, right? By these companies. But that means also that these companies own all these servers. So they have the whole control and the power over this cloud that they are providing to the consumers, like us, we are using, who are using this cloud in the end. And this also means that they could shut down the service at one point whenever they want to go out of business or they have to go out of business. They could also theoretically access all the data that is on these servers, right? Of course, they don't do this and they promise us to not do this, but they actually can from a technical way. And this is actually where Phala network is completely different. And this is also exactly these leaks that we want to solve with our cloud. So Phala network is a protocol, right? It's not a company. Of course, we work with Phala network through a company, but Phala network is really a decentralized protocol. And the cloud that we provide, all the servers that are out there in the network or that provide the computation, they're not owned by Phala network or by the company behind it. They're owned by the community. So everyone that wants to provide computation and also receive incentives through this, right? This is how the tokenomics work. They spin up a node, of course, with specific requirements, and they can provide the computation. And this is exactly how we first of all provide decentralization. So again, we cannot shut down the service or the computation, the cloud, different than an AWS or a Google as company. And the fact, I mentioned this before, that we use specific hardware. So everyone that is a node operator needs to has hardware, which we call like secure enclaves, where all the transactions are being executed. So even the node operator or anyone that actually is part of the network cannot access the information that's been transacted and executed in the node. And that's how we achieve the confidentiality. And again, this is also completely different than from the centralized solutions. I think it's always very, very important to understand how decentralized solutions work and then to see how we do this different. And this is really where we differentiate us as a service provider. And that's what we want to bring also as awareness to the users itself.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. So like when we learn about cloud infrastructure, like traditional cloud infrastructure, yes, our information is stored in the cloud, but it's not actually stored in like thin air. It is actually stored in on servers in a big building somewhere eventually. So, and they own the building where all that's owned, where all that stays and everything else. And you always wonder, like, what happens if there's a massive fire or I don't know, somebody wants to destroy what's in there or hack into what's in there. Like it kind of is possible. So like having a decentralized alternative to that is, I guess, what people want. Well, they don't realize that they need it, but some people want it. So what is a fat contract and how is it different to a smart contract?
Yeah, very good. I think we have to blend it in so people read it how it's spelled, because we just rebranded it actually from like FAT to PHAT, right? So it's like in our Phala brand. And the name is also kind of funny, but it actually comes from like, let's say fat, from like the amount of like features it brings, right? It's very like a rich contract, and it's completely different than a smart contract, but still a contract. And it's always great to bring this comparison to a smart contract. But simply said, it's like an innovative programming model, right, that we developed at Phala Network. And the cool thing is about a fat contract is that it is running off-chain. So if you compare it to a smart contract, they're always running on a blockchain itself. So we at Phala Network we separate actually consensus from the computation. And that's how we also work rather like a cloud than like a chain itself. And these Fed contracts, they're executed off chain in these secure enclaves.
Right.
So by this, as I explained before, we provide the privacy again, right? Everything that's executed in these contracts is not accessible to anyone except the owner of the contract if he types in like a specific parameter in the code, but not the node operator itself. Also, because we execute it off-chain, it's very low latency, right? You don't have any gas fees because it's not running on the blockchain itself. However, it can access everything through internet access and has some HTTP requests, for example. So it's a very, very powerful contract, right? That only is possible through having it executed in our off-chain nodes, but it's still decentralized, right? And with this, we can actually enable a lot of use cases. We always say like impossible dApps possible with Fed contracts. So that's a new slogan we're putting out there, because it is a bottleneck at the moment in Web3. There are a lot of cool use cases that we want to develop also from an infrastructure level, but it's not possible with the tools that we have at the moment. That cannot be executed with the smart contract because the gas fees are just crazy high, right? So with the Fed contract that we developed, we can actually enable a lot of new use cases that have a very decentralized and confidential infrastructure with, again, low latency, low cost, and all these advantages that come with it.
Excellent. Thanks for explaining that. So yeah, I think I did read that somewhere, and I thought this is really interesting that not everything has to be, just because your blockchain project, not everything has to be on chain. And I feel like that might be one of the that's one of the challenges that some projects face. Like they try to make everything on chain, and it's not necessarily the answer to what it's not necessarily the solution to what they're trying to achieve. So what's Phala trying to achieve? What's your mission, and how do you plan on reaching that goal?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, we want to become like the most used computation protocol, right? Decentralized computation protocol in the Web3 stack. And if you compare it a little bit about, if you compare it with like the overall cloud business again, there are different approaches how you could approach like a cloud business. Either you have, like, as we talked about before, as AWS, about AWS, where they have the servers, they sell the servers, you have to deploy your server, and then you have, can develop your dApp on it. Or if you look more into a different approach where you actually provide a service that's running on servers. And this is exactly where we as Phala position ourselves more. It's like saying, okay, we have a decentralized cloud, we are a decentralized computation platform, but we actually provide you a service to access these servers. And this is actually what we do now with Fed contract. I love to compare it because this is how people get it a bit more. For developers, they are aware of AWS Lambda, right? It's a serverless function. So a serverless function makes it possible to access a server with almost zero development effort or like infrastructure effort to host this kind of server. And Fed contracts, they run on our nodes. We actually make it very easy for a developer or simple to use the cloud, to spin up a server, or again, they don't need to spin up the server, they just use the serverless function to access the cloud. And this is how we want to position us, or how we're positioning us, that we become, that we provide, let's say, a palette of services that can be used to actually, to access and to use our cloud. So if you, again, think of like a traditional centralized cloud platform, you open it up, you have like dashboard, you see a lot of services, AWS Lambda, the database, and so on. You click, pop, and then you have everything together. This, of course, a long way to get there, but that's our roadmap, to really have these different integrations, also storage, right? I said Phala Network doesn't store any data. We have like interfaces, APIs to Airwave, or even S3 as a centralized solution, or other decentralized storages. And this is how we want to create this whole palette and package for the developer to spin up their computation in a very easy way.
Cool. Thanks for explaining that. So right now, do you guys have an ambassador campaign for Phala? And how can our community get involved?
Yes, ambassadors. We do have a very active ambassador program. We also just hired a new senior community manager that is very dedicated to look for or after this program. Just check out on our website, phala.network. We have, it's actually listed there as one of the menu points, the ambassador program. And you get a very smooth onboard through the Discord. And then you can also see what kind of skill set do you want to bring to the community, right? This is always the cool thing about ambassador programs, is that you really can develop your own skill set, right? It's not saying like you have to do this kind of work or this. You come in and say what you want to bring in. And of course, since we are computation cloud, we encourage a lot of our ambassadors to run server nodes, computation nodes, but that's not necessary, right? You can create content for the network. You can host events, global events for Phala network. Yeah, encourage you to check it out. So just on the website, maybe we can link this afterwards here as well.
Sure, if you share that link with us, we'll post it when we post this. So thank you for that. So let's talk about some of the highlights of Phala. What exciting things have you achieved so far? And let's talk about some of your accomplishments with your partners.
Yeah. So, I mean, mainly our focus really at the moment is on Fed contract itself, right? So Fed contract is the new feature, the new production on our own cloud. We are about to launch. So this will be a big milestone when we launch the final version or the production version of Fed contract. Of course, it's usable already. You can test it. You can look into the GitHub repo and so on. But we are planning to launch it now in the next month. And with Fed contract being live, actually, there are a lot of other milestones that are coming with it. You guys might have heard about Phala World, right? Phala World is a very big project that we are also building on top of our cloud. So we have now a bit of a focus. Of course, we need use cases on the cloud to showcase how it works, and we do this through partners, right, in the ecosystem. But we also develop our own applications, and Phala World, for example, is one of these applications, which in the end also uses Fed contract. So we actually connect all these, these components together to showcase the power of the cloud and the technology itself. Regarding so Phala World, just shortly, is the gamification extension of your your contribution to the network. So we want with this motivate the community more to interact with the network, with the blockchain itself, but also, of course, expand the community, right, and bring in new people. Just check it out. It has its own Twitter account, a website as well, phala.world. Mm-hmm. And regarding partners, I mean, there's a lot going on always. We have working partnership definitely with like specific projects, mainly in the Polkadot ecosystem. But since our cloud is a decentralized protocol or platform that is like independent to any blockchain, we are now focusing also on approaching the other ecosystems to provide them the computation, mainly also for the gaming verticals.
Okay, that sounds really cool. So do you have any exciting updates coming up in the next few months, like any events and things like that where we could catch the Phala guys?
Yeah, we actually do. I mean, the conference season is coming up again, or we just talked about it before, right? So Singapore was just there. Our team in Asia was there. So I'm actually going to be at the Web Summit. We are having a booth there. So Phala Network will be represented during Lisbon Blockchain Week a lot. Then we have some Polkadot specific events, conferences that are in Madrid and London Token 49. 2049, we will be represented there as well. And then also big shoot out to the next big Polkadot conference called Sub-Zero. Mm-hmm. It's actually the developer focus conference. So for everyone that's interested to really learn about the underlying or the whole tech, right, substrate, Polkadot itself, parachains, I really encourage you guys to check out Sub-Zero. It's happening 28th and 29th of November in Lisbon. So we will be there as well, speaking, giving a workshop about Fed contract and a lot of other parachains. So yeah, these are the main journeys now in November, and then let's see what comes next.
Cool. So we can see from, you're an ambassador, like, diehard Polkadot fan. So what else draws you? What particularly draws you to Polkadot, and why is Polkadot the right choice for Phala?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, from a personal perspective, I think I covered this a little bit, like in my personal journey, right? It was really the understanding the innovation of this blockchain compared to other blockchains. Of course, you could argue like Cosmos, right, is like also the internet of blockchains, or there are now other blockchains coming up where you have like app chains, parachains, whatsoever. But it's really the core. If you read the white papers also between Cosmos and Polkadot, you really see that they maybe have the same vision, but completely differently architectured. And this is really what brought me to this ecosystem. And of course, really seeing also the people that are working in it. I mean, Polkadot overall has like the biggest developer community. Maybe not the biggest marketing brand, right? Like in terms of like compared to others. But if you look into developer community, how many people actually build on this chain, it is the biggest ecosystem so far. And it's pretty cool. So it really has the coolest tech and the most innovative one, and the tech that most use cases are actually possible to develop on. But of course, there are a lot of other things that can be improved. But it's always important to understand that we are very, very early in the game, right? Polkadot launched 2 years ago, right? If you think about Ethereum, Bitcoin, and all the other chains, like how long they're already in the game, it's like we are only here for a second, right? So it takes some time to get this traction more. But back to your question, also like what we brought us and personally to it is also this approach saying, okay, we have the interoperability, right? We are really focusing on how can we connect ecosystems, how can we work outside our ecosystem and bridge to others, use XCM as a transfer message protocol, and other tools to really connect blockchains with each other. So regarding our founders, Marvin and Han, for example, that actually also in 2018 decided to develop Phala and use Polkadot instead of other chains, it was also mainly about the vision that Gavin Wood puts out, right? Gavin is known in the Ethereum ecosystem, but then coming up with this approach saying, hey, if I could build Ethereum in a new way, how would I do it? And then coming up with Polkadot. This, of course, excites a lot of people. And the whole vision that he's carrying about Web3 is really what also draw our founders to the network from this philosophical approach, right? Of course, then the technology itself speaks for itself and really shows that it's super easy to onboard a new parachain, because you can take advantage of the validator set, right? The shared security, and then of course the interoperability if you think in a more shared blockchain vision for your protocol.
Cool. Yeah. And I think that's what makes it possible. The fact that you're actually on like a proof of stake, interoperable blockchain that believes in like a multi-chain future. That's how like Phala can actually be deployed or work with other ecosystems outside of Polkadot. So that's I think another reason why people find it like they go to at the minute. So what do you think will drive the adoption of Web3, and where do you see the Web3 movement as being in the next few years?
Very good question. I think we ask ourselves this too little. And in my perspective, what really will draw or push the mass adoption of Web3, right? We are still somehow in our own space here, is the user experience. The user experience is so important for our space to get new people in the space, even for us to be excited to use interfaces and to use the technology, right? So it is the user interface that needs a lot of improvement, that needs a lot of focus. How can we develop it for users that are not familiar with the underlying technology, and how can we actually make them use the technology without needing to understand it? Yeah, so there are a lot of interfaces where you really need to still see like hashes and all these encryption stuff, and you're like, it scares people, and then they stay away from actually using our technology. So this is what we need to improve on. We do this a lot at Phala Network. We have our own productions on it. For this, we really focus a lot on usability. You see this also in all the designs that we put out for Phala World. Phala World in general, right? It's like a very big development to engage the community with a lot of effort and focus on the design in a very beautiful way. So you see that we really carry this vision with us. And where we are going to be. So from my perspective, I'm super excited about interoperability, right? There are people in the space that say like, you don't really need interoperability, you want to keep things on your chain. But I'm a big promoter of saying interoperability between ecosystems, between chains is what we need. We are on a good way there, right? We have all the technology laid out. We have the IBC protocol from Cosmos that's already in use to actually bridge or send messages between other ecosystems. In Polkadot, we have the XCM, the cross consensus messaging passing, for example, or XCMP, that's being used to send messages between parachains or go outside the ecosystem also. And that's what I'm very excited about, to enable use cases in DeFi, for example, swap tokens between main chains without knowing what's behind, what's actually happening in the background. Or a lot of other use cases where you really want to make the use of all the chains that are out there. And so usability is what we need for adoption, and interoperability is where I see the biggest boom now in the next 2 years.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. I agree. Interoperability is probably like the next big step for these blockchains to sort of just get along, play nicely. And I think that's what's going to drive the adoption. What about for Phala? I know you spoke about Phala World and things like that. Where do you see yourselves like within 2 years? And we've had about your vision and everything else, but what do you realistically think you can achieve within 2 years from now? What will change, or what will you develop or execute by then?
Sure. Yeah. So if you understand where we are standing right now with like Fed contract launching this year, Phala World is also in high-speed development. We are, and we have also a product called Subbridge that is actually like an asset transfer messaging protocol that enables also, cross-chain transactions. And this is all what you see as like the infrastructure that we are building to get traction for big use cases. So in the next 2 years, I really focus on, of course, my responsibility also specifically to get big use cases on our cloud to really leverage our whole product offering. The features that I explained before, the cloud itself, the cloud is stable, is out there to use, but we of course have to improve on things like how can we actually access and like the cloud and make it very, very easy for developers. So in the next 2 years, or if we both speak in 2 years again, I hope I can tell you a lot about like big use cases that have been deployed on Phala Network itself, and a lot of use cases for Fed contract that we are working on already.
Well, I hope to catch up with you in 2 years and see how much of that you've actually executed. But no, hopefully we will be chatting again before then. Maybe you can hop on again for another AMA or something like that when you've got any announcements to make. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will be sharing all the links about Phala World, the ambassador campaign, and things like that, definitely. And look forward to seeing you again in our community soon. So thank you so much for your time and all of your answers today, Zoe.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Shaila. Looking forward to receive any questions from you guys and stay connected. And happy to share everything that we talked about today.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It was lovely to learn about Phala today. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.